We're heading to a place in Wicker Park that used to be filled with a whole lot of money. Currently, it's better known as another underground spot for people to buy their drugs and pills. And the city's all the better for it. Welcome to the Vitamin Vault, a section of a Walgreens store that formerly served as a bank from the 1920s all the way into the early 2000s. Architect Dan Garnell wonderfully utilized this old Art Deco building so that it is now a neighborhood drugstore open to everyone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Who wouldn't want to get their Flintstones vitamins from here?
Architecture is always about history.
And it's created using various degrees of imagination, engineering, materials, and funding. Not all structures are created equal. Depending on your personal tastes, the most recent buildings are either the best of the best or somewhat dead behind the eyes. However you feel about most contemporary architecture, there's no question that old buildings are typically very, very different from the new ones. The 1800s and early 1900s gave us some buildings that looked like this. But now we get a lot of this. The willpower of architects of bygone days created images like this, the Rookery Building from 1888, dreamed up by Burnham and Root. And then we have the newest massive structures popping up, which are fine as they are, and it's good that we have new buildings being constructed at all. But vintage buildings retain their undeniable appeal on many different levels. Let's explore more examples of architectural repurposing.
Charles Darwin tells us that in order to survive, you have to adapt. And that can go for creations as well as living beings. What used to be an 1880 church, one that was partially destroyed by a fire in 1979, stays behind in fragmented form as a piece of public art. This place is called a ghost church. It's more of a facade than an actual building at this point in time. Its crucifix is partially protected by a hanging window, and though it's visibly fragile, it'll probably be around longer than any of us. This reinforced former sanctuary is a safe, commanding symbol of solace and timelessness within this community. Not every structure shows its history as clearly as Pilsen's ghost church.
SNA Studios made a bunch of silent films in the early 1900s, but these days there's much less excitement going on in here, as far as we know. It was a motion pictures company that employed some of the first movie stars, such as Charlie Chaplin and Gloria Swanson, and now it's condos, which is why we're not going to be entering it. Back in the 1910s, it was Klieg lights consuming all the electricity here, but nowadays it's safe to assume that it's more floor lamps and iPhone chargers. But at least the building on Argyle Street is still standing and its history is well documented.
It is possible that some of the pictures produced at the SNA Studios were shown here at the Kakuzo Theater. It was designed by George H. Borst and opened in 1915 for live performances and movie screenings. If you get tired of looking through the racks, you can try figuring out the fading images still clinging to the walls. There are flowers and trees, and it looks like there are a lot of other details too, but not everything's still visible. I wish that we could see what those images look like in the way they were intended, but what you see is all that remains of that art. Chicago's history names a bunch of vintage theaters and never made it past the year 2000. It's good to see that this old auditorium turned secondhand store is being used and loved in a trendy part of town. The remaining details in this building aren't perfectly preserved, but imperfect is much better than nothing. The Kakuzo Theater has a much happier history than the next place. Let's go north, out of state for a minute, and visit Traverse City, Michigan.
what today is called the Village at Traverse City Commons. It used to be known officially as the Traverse City Regional Psychiatric Hospital. It served as a residential facility for patients since the late 1800s. It was run down for many years and almost demolished in the 1960s. Although it now consists of condos, event spaces, retail, and restaurants, this massive and beautifully haunting 1884 series of buildings was formerly a place filled with suffering. As you can see, renovations are successful in the main buildings, but are still ongoing in some parts. Contrasting the history of this complex with its current set of uses makes the Grand Traverse Commons a uniquely dramatic example of architectural reorientation.
To view another incredible place that barely avoided the wrecking ball, we head back down Lake Michigan to the Chicago Cultural Center, a gigantic neoclassical beast from 1897.
This used to be Chicago's central library building for most of the 20th century.
You can see quotes from favorite authors in the mosaics. Modeled after Renaissance palaces, this design by Shepley, Rutan, and Coolidge features the world's largest Tiffany glass dome and gallery rooms on multiple floors. It's difficult to imagine that the city once considered dismantling the building, but that was put to a stop by an initiative championed by Eleanor Daly and a dedicated committee in the early 1970s. One of the rooms in the Cultural Center was created as a headquarters for the Grand Army of the Republic, which was a group of Union-side Civil War veterans. The Chicago Cultural Center is a perfect example of old and high-maintenance but one-of-a-kind structures that are no longer being built. Sometimes buildings like this, if they're not well cared for, can become beyond saving if they reach a certain point of decay. If time, effort, and money is available, preserving public spaces like this gives our city's historic context and spirit.